Hello and welcome back to A Shark's Perspective. So you've only heard me talk about sharks on every episode of this show, okay? It's because it is who I am. I've been swimming with sharks since I was a kid, and I just have such an appreciation for these beautiful creatures in the wild who are so often misunderstood, and sadly we see too many being senselessly killed every year. But it's not just that. Sharks are both a brand for me, but also how I live my life. And it also is an understanding of how we in business, and even just in life, deal with and overcome fear. Once you break free of that, understand how to channel it and deal with it, you can truly achieve so much more. I am very excited to welcome Dr. Austin Gallagher, a marine biologist and considered a world authority on sharks, the CEO and chief scientist of the NGO Beneath the Waves, a National Geographic Explorer, a Fulbright Distinguished Chair in Environmental Science at Canada's Carleton University, an Adjunct Professor at Northeastern University, and he's given a TEDx Talk on facing and overcoming fears. And on this episode, we'll discuss sharks and the 450-million-year-old perfect dish fish, cutting-edge research, overfishing and shark finning, keeping our ocean waters cleaner, apex predators who need to be protected, how brands are using sharks in their marketing and advertising today, Shark Week in the Discovery Channel, Jaws, the Benchleys, Shaq, Aquaman, giving a tiger shark an ultrasound, and a lot more. So let's tune in to a shark doctor being interviewed by the one and only Mr. Shark on this episode of A Shark's Perspective. Dr. Gallagher, thank you so much for joining us today on A Shark's Perspective. So obviously I knew who you were because of your background. This is a show, I think, especially for me, just because of my love of sharks. But if you don't mind, give us a little bit about your background and your career to date.
Sure, yeah. Thanks a lot for having me on the podcast, Kenneth. Really appreciate it. And always love talking sharks. Always love trying to tell some new stories or share some new insights. And, obviously was drawn to the marketing concepts that you talk about all the time. So sure. Dr. Austin Gallagher, marine biologist. I am chief executive and lead scientist at a nonprofit organization called Beneath the Waves, headquartered in Washington, D.C., but we do work all over the world with a big focus on trying to do the science that's needed for the oceans we want. Really focusing on threatened species like sharks, doing really impactful, epic, and exciting science with these large animals, but also trying to collect that data to help create protected areas where they can live safe and promote sort of marine biodiversity. So it's been a lot of fun. I've been doing that for about a decade now since I finished my PhD. Also have been involved in a number of startups from, co-founder to advisor in different spaces such as CPG, apparel, and just really excited about business and science and integrating those two things.
Well, Austin, it may surprise you that you're the only guest to ever appear on the show who has performed an ultrasound on a pregnant tiger shark. So that is a high distinction, I would imagine.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Appreciate it. Never gets old. That's for sure. Never gets old.
Where do you spend most of your time? Is it in the Caribbean or in other waters?
Yeah, so most of our research is focused on the Caribbean. You're correct. And we love being able to work there for a couple reasons. One, there are so many interesting places to visit. There are so many sharks in certain countries, places like the Bahamas, where sharks have been protected for, over 20 years now, almost 20 years now. So they're in really good shape there. And using that as a jumping off point to get other countries in the Caribbean excited, because not all of them are as sort of robust as the Bahamas in terms of marine conservation. So I do spend a lot of time in the Bahamas, a big team that helps do expeditions and lead trips, sometimes while I'm there, sometimes while I'm not there. Work in other places like Turks and Caicos, Cayman Islands, the Dutch Caribbean, and spend quite a bit of time in the Atlantic Ocean, up off of Nantucket and Martha's Vineyard, and mostly in the summer. So yeah, those are the two main areas, and then every now and then we'll do a trip somewhere like Africa or Asia to sort of collaborate with someone else or to work on a specific project. Maybe go on an invited talk. A couple years ago, I was invited to Hong Kong to give a keynote, which was a lot of fun. And it's been I'm just really lucky, Kenneth, honestly, to be able to do what I love and to have an audience for that is a pretty powerful thing.
No, I think your life is amazing. I of all the people that I've interviewed, you're perfect example of what I wanted to be when I grew up and and didn't. I'm just amazed at what you've done. This
Thank
is
you.
also, a first. This is probably the first time you've been interviewed by a shark, so that's at least going to take this to a different conversation. What inspired you to
Yeah.
become a marine biologist?
And yeah, this probably is the first time I've been interviewed by a shark, but I have done interviews with many sharks. They just don't talk back.
Exactly.
When we catch them and tag them. Um, Ever since I was a kid, I was obsessed with big things, big animals, big, large predatory animals that had to, kill in order to survive. I don't know why. I never liked the creepy crawly stuff. I
No.
still don't really, to be honest. But I always liked these big, really majestic, charismatic animals. And dinosaurs, those were huge for me. And just kept reading it as a kid. I just kept reading. I read a ton of books. My parents were amazing. They gave me, a lot of experiential opportunities, traveling to places like the Caribbean at a young age. My dad always tried to get a mask, fin, and snorkels on me at any time, which was, wonderful. Looking back at those, I really appreciate what they did for me in those early years of my life. And yeah, I was able to forge ahead into that career path. For me, it was always about sharks. I love them. And it's, believe it or not, extremely competitive. I always try to tell people that it is actually a really competitive field to get into, even though it seems quite niche. But most of the people who are marine biologists, they are inspired by or attracted to those charismatic animals. So it was an exercise in resilience for sure.
Yeah.
Trying to, cut your teeth and make a name for yourself when you have really very few things to stand on, and except just pure sweat equity and determination when you're a young boy or girl. So yeah, I'm very lucky, like I said earlier, to have been able to make a living doing that. And yeah, it's an epic career, that's for sure.
Yeah, well, the Caribbean as well. I was able to first see a shark as a child, as a toddler, in the water in the Caribbean, and that's what got me inspired. And you're absolutely right. There's just so many sharks that are there, and they are so amazing. And I think it helps people just understand that they're, while they are an apex predator, they're also just fish. And people get so scared. And I'd love for you to kind of give your viewpoint on how you look at sharks today from what the public sees with movies versus what you see as a biologist.
Sure. These are the oldest vertebrates on our planet. And vertebrates are animals that have backbones. So literally everything from fish, which were the first sort of vertebrates, all the way up to humans. They were the first ones. They're 450 million years old. So they've been around for a long time, Kenneth. And they've been evolving. They're not perfect. Nothing is perfect. Sometimes sharks are called perfect predators. And I respect that, but I don't think anything is actually perfect, but they're pretty damn near close.
Yeah, perfect-ish.
And perfect-ish, there you go. And yeah, I mean, I think, 30, 40 years ago, in the 70s, 80s, 90s, there was a sentiment of, people have always been inspired by and passionate for sharks, but the feeling was a bit more towards trying to conquer them,
right,
and go out and sort of dragon slay, these animals. And after Jaws came out in the 70s, there was a lot of interest around these animals, wanting to see them. And shark research was very, very nascent and didn't really exist in the way it does today, back in the 70s, 80s, and even in the 90s. But that sentiment has changed, particularly in the last 20, 25 years. Great white sharks were protected federally in the United States in the 90s. And, that's sort of like a big watershed moment there, where you see this changing sentiment from, wanting to kill them to now wanting to protect them. And it's even gotten to the point now where, yes, a lot of people still need to be educated about these animals. 100 million sharks a year killed for their fins.
Exactly.
Awful, awful, awful eradication of a very important apex predator. Keeps oceans healthy. But these animals are almost worshipped as gods from a lot of people today. And, I think they're more popular than they've ever been, to be honest.
How much of that do you credit to something like Shark Week, just the phenomenon they've created?
Massive. I mean, Shark Week is huge. Sharks, Discovery Channel is incredible. I was the kid who was watching it as a kid. I just repeated myself, but I was the kid who was glued to the screen, watching it. And so many of us were. And even a lot of us who don't maybe necessarily publicly say we love Shark Week, people will tune into that.
Absolutely.
So it's got a loyal following of millions of people. It's many people's primary way of learning about the most recent science and updates. Some people like to criticize it for being overly dramatized, but I don't think that that's actually fair. I mean, in many cases, these are top predators, and they have to be portrayed the way they are. But marketers also like to play into the fears that people have of these animals, and that's okay as long as it's nothing too crazy. And I think as long as there's good, science that drives a lot of those shows, then it's great. And Shark Week is amazing. I've been fortunate to be on, several shows the last couple of years, and got a couple more coming out summer 2020. And it is the number one platform for getting people stoked about sharks.
Yeah. So what do you think of Jaws, the movie Jaws? I get asked this question all the time.
I love it. It's just an unbelievable piece of cinema.
Exactly.
I think it's the first ever blockbuster. I love it. It's, I always saw myself as the Hooper character, the marine biologist, which is pretty cool.
Right.
And entertaining. I still think it holds up in many cases today, even though it's clearly a big rubber shark. But, I'm a fan of it. Actually, Wendy Benchley, who's the wife of the late Peter Benchley, is actually on our board of directors.
Oh, wow.
Beneath the Waves recently. So just so wild for my team and personally to be able to, talk to her and learn about Peter. And Wendy's actually, obviously she's an icon because she was right there with Peter when he was doing all of those things, writing the book, working with Spielberg on set. Peter became a conservation biologist, or conservationist, I should say, after Jaws, and he went out and he was a real advocate for sharks, and he did TV shows and appearances and wrote many other books that were more focused on the natural history element.
Right.
So, he left an amazing legacy, and the movie has left an amazing legacy on so many of us.
Well, so many people that I know that are avid shark lovers find Jaws to be abhorrent, and they find a lot of Shark Week to be just completely abhorrent. But as a movie lover, from a cinema perspective, Jaws is just fantastic. It is a little crazy, but I'm not the kind of person that is going to turn a great white. I'm not going to turn my back on one. I think people just need to understand and respect them, and not let fear channel every anxiety and make it want to be politically correct. But Shark Week, I'm still the kid that watches it. I actually scheduled a vacation one time the week prior or the week after. I don't remember at the time, but I didn't want to go because I wanted to watch Shark Week, which was ridiculous because I could have DVR'd everything, but I just didn't want to miss them. But there's as much today about conservationism for sharks and the wildlife as there is the occasional story where deadly sharks attacking people on the beach. But for most people that spend time in the water, they know that you've always got to respect a very curious animal because they're a wild animal, no different than stupid Tiger King getting bitten by tigers and that kind of stuff. But it's a very different, except for bull sharks. Bull sharks are the only ones I don't love, even though that was
I would agree with you on that.
Yeah, that was oddly enough my newest tattoo, but that's the one I couldn't. You just can't seem to shake a lot of those off. But I just think that Shark Week is highlighted the conversation and just what they're doing with tagging and the importance of the conservation around them. But you said, before we jump into the business stuff, one other question, you said something about shark finning and the need to stop it, which I couldn't agree more. Really with just killing sharks for unnecessary reasons. But do you find that to be, in your mind, the biggest thing that's threatening sharks today? And the reason I say that is I'm also, having just gotten back from a dive in the Caribbean, noticing again the bleaching of the waters, the lack of fish that are there compared to what it was, say, 20 years ago, the pollution in the water. I'm not doing a Greenpeace pitch, but as somebody who's seen the waters, I'm sure, change over your own career, it's as big of a threat as fishermen in Southeast Asia trying to kill sharks.
Yeah. Overfishing is without a doubt the number one threat facing sharks. reason why their populations are depleting
Yeah.
is because of this, in many cases, unregulated, irresponsible overfishing. But sharks are very slow growing. You
Yes.
mentioned it earlier, Kenneth. They are fish, but they actually function a lot more like mammals
Right.
than most people think. And it's because they're so slow growing. They have just a few babies. They take a long time to reach shark puberty. These types of things make them very vulnerable to population change, negative population change. So definitely that's the most negative thing that's happening to sharks. Oceans are in trouble, that's for sure. We can't, there's no point in sugarcoating it. People need to just wake the hell up to this, especially in light of everything that's happened with COVID-19. Our planet's hurting right now, and she's not very happy. If you look at what's happening with storms and droughts and zoonotic disease outbreaks and all of these things, we're not treating our planet the right way. It is a living organism. It's a super organism. Everything really is connected. So that's point number one. And point number two is, yes, there is a lot to be scared about, but there's also a lot to be excited about. And there are success stories out there. Great white sharks were protected in the 90s. Their populations are increasing on both coasts of the United States. Only place in the world where their populations are seeming to really be increasing. That's something we should be really proud of. So there are success stories out there, and you got to believe that the best scientists in the world, the best marine biologists in the world, old school, new school, everybody's working on these issues.
Exactly.
And as long as there's support for that work and a constant, reliable source of funding, and it's not always going to be from governments, it has to come from the private sector and business.
Absolutely.
As long as that continues, I think we have a shot. And that's the thing, too, to your other point, which is a lot of haters out there on the shark movies and Sharknado 18 or 19. I'm not sure if they're on 18 or 19 yet, but there's so many of them out there. But the bottom line, I hope those movies continue. I hope there's 47 meters down 3 years from now, because as long as the sharks are in the conversation and they're in the social media lexicon and they're on our minds, then they're going to get attention. And then it's up to us to be able to channel that into positive attention.
Yeah, I don't know about that 47 meters down reference. I actually like the first one, but that last one left a little bit to be desired. But I agree. If they were doing a new blockbuster every year and it was a little bit off. Now, I mean, the three-headed shark movies are a little ridiculous, what sci-fi does, but,
there's definitely a cutoff for me. But I don't go three-headed.
Yeah.
But,
two heads maybe, but three, no way.
Yeah, you had me at two, but anyway, all good.
Well, so I heard on your TED Talk that you first encountered sharks in, was it 2011? Was it the first time you get into the water with them?
First time I got in the water with a big shark,
Gotcha.
big tiger, predatory, aka a shark that could do damage. That was 2011, but I've been swimming with sharks for my whole life since I was 10, 11 years old in Mexico, Florida Keys, places like that. Mostly nurse sharks, small reef sharks. I think I saw my first hammerhead when I was 12 years old in the Florida Keys from like 40 feet away.
Yeah.
But in terms of like the first, okay, we're doing this, intense underwater on scuba, big tiger shark coming up to me and spending those moments, those incredible moments. That was, in the last decade. And it's been the only way I could describe spending time with big predatory animals is just sublime, because it really does kind of rewire your brain and makes you appreciate where you stand in the grand scheme of things.
Exactly. Well, so you were in Mexico. Were you close to Baja with the large females?
Wasn't in Baja, no.
Okay.
I've been on the Atlantic side,
Gotcha.
Caribbean side of Mexico, and done whale sharks and things like that. But the reference I was talking about was actually Isla Mujeres, which is a location where whale sharks are, congregate. But I think I was there when I was 11 or 10 years old, and my dad threw me in this little pit with a nurse shark and a local dude, and I think we bought him a beer, and he, kind of just threw me in there, and he was holding it, and I wasn't really an interaction, but I was in the water with an 8-foot shark, and that was pretty wild.
Well, you did in that TED Talk, you spoke about facing fear. And it's kind of funny when you think about you're in the water with near whale sharks, which are massively large. I just saw 3 of them six, 9 months ago. But you get in there and you see this 12-foot, 13-foot tiger shark, a massively big striped bus with teeth. And it really does, like you said, we're doing this. Talk about how that has helped you overcome fear.
Sure. Fear is, in my opinion, and I think a lot of people who have tried to conquer it or face it, it is the probably single most important driver of everything we do as people. If you really boil it down to it, every decision we make is a risk reward type decision, which ladders back to fear. And we are not being hunted by saber-toothed tigers anymore.
Right.
And because of that, we did evolve a part of our brain to help process things like fear. And should we do a fight or flight response? Do we need to run away from this? But for sure, there are other ways that we, are challenged and our survival is challenged as humans, like what's happening today with coronavirus. And, people are staying inside as they should be because they're afraid of contracting this. At least the smart people are. And so it is a huge thing. And I do believe that if everybody was able to get a better grip on fear, they really would be in a better position to accomplish the goals that they want in life. It's something I see all the time. Even in some of my closest friends and business partners over the years, colleagues, mentors, fear is everything. So for me, being able to spend time in the water with sharks, which is linked to my actual profession, it's pretty wild because, like I said, you sort of strip everything down and there's no technology, there's no phone in your hand. You're just floating there, kind of in the environment that we don't belong in, but an environment that we can really relate to because we are 70% water, by the way. So wild experiences, and you're kind of flipping all the switches on and off in your brain, and your senses are wired. You feel really connected to your body and your mind like you never have been before. And I think those experiences have truthfully changed my brain, the wiring of my brain, and kind of demonstrated to me that, most things in life aren't that scary. And not all of my experiences with sharks are scary, by the way, but it is just it's like a mental workout. It's no different than training yourself for a marathon. It's just being out there and putting your mind through those repetitions and getting comfortable with discomfort. I think a lot of us are just so comfortable in our day-to-day routines. We don't challenge or push ourselves enough, and because it's hard and it doesn't feel good. But the gains from that on the other side are really massive, and I've seen that firsthand with my experiences with sharks.
Amen. There's so many times I've been in the water with them, and I didn't think about it until after. It was really watching other people just react in a scared, and there's a component of fear that's also a good thing. Using that, it's just knowing how you channel it, but watching people get out of the water and get back on the boat, things like that. It makes you often wonder until you really have those conversations with them later, figure out what's holding them back. And then when they break through it, it's amazing in general, but then when you put them in the water and really appreciate what's in the ocean, where you can, again, do what I do, which is not take tech in the water other than my computer for 99% of the time. Mm-hmm. It's the most wonderful place in the world that I can deal with all my other mental issues and just relax and be at one with the world. And you just to bring something else back up, though, something I see all the time that I find interesting is that I don't like seeing pollution anywhere. But if I see as much as a cigarette butt in the water, 30, 40 feet down, not that I'm scouting cigarette butts 60 feet down, but when you see something, any form of trash deep in the water, it just really saddens you. So I think if people could just stop doing that, that would help as well.
Yeah,
definitely. How has that channeling that fear helped you with being involved with a shark brand? How has that helped you develop these different businesses and raise money either for startups or for your 501c3 and those kind of endeavors as a nonprofit? That's got to have helped you a lot as well.
It has, Kenneth. And it just boil it down to the baseline principal component. it's just putting yourself out there,
Yeah.
and you know, realizing that if you want things to happen for yourself or your team or your group, your organization, it's not going to come to you. You have to put yourself out there. And, for most people, facing their fears could be something as simple as, posting a picture of themselves on social media, or getting up and talking to 5 people at a dinner party, or to even going outside. That's a huge stressor for some folks. But for me, and not everybody's going to go shark diving, but just speaking from my own experiences, being able to, get up on stage in front of 500 people and give a talk. Flying halfway around the world by yourself to another country and trying to navigate it, and trying to raise money in another country. And just on that fundraising bit, asking people for things, asking people for help, whether it's in-kind services or large sums of money to move your organization forward. So I do think that it's made me more confident. I don't consider myself arrogant, but I do consider myself confident. And without that sense of confidence, and you just won't be able to move forward. So I think that would be it for me.
Where do you want to see your own conservancy go beneath the waves? What's the goal, the end goal for somebody that's in your place? I mean, there's never going to be enough funding in my mind to help causes like yours continue. It seems like this is going to be an ongoing battle when your own child is a grandparent someday. I don't know if this work will ever stop, but what's sort of the goal for you in your business, the end
Sure.
game, if you will?
Yeah, and I guess first I would say that it's there's always going to be work to be done. Conservation is a never-ending quest, and it's always a compromise. We're never going to get everything we want in terms of protection or things like that. It's always going to be a compromise. So things need to be worked on to get them going, and then adaptively managed after you have conservation success, like creating a protective measure for a shark species or something like that. So and that's the thing is, I hope that the funding will continue, and it seems like the private sector is going to play a larger role, but people are. I get it. Some people need to worry about putting food on their plate, and there are other issues out there every day: homelessness and poverty and diseases and all these things. But without sounding cliche, if we don't invest in our planet, we're not investing in ourselves. We rely on the ocean for so much of our own survival, from the air we breathe to the food we eat and the environment that we like living in. And we need to keep that ocean as healthy as possible to support our own species. Our end goal, I wouldn't even call it an end goal, but our evolving mission is to do cutting edge science that advances discovery, but then also catalyzes ocean policy. And we're really laser focused now, Kenneth, on trying to do rapid science in areas where there's political will for ocean solutions, and specifically focusing on protecting the large expanses of our ocean. There's a big push right now internationally to protect 30% of our planet's oceans by 2030. And we are just one of several hundred groups that are hopefully going to be contributing to that by doing the science, working with local governments and partners to get those pieces of legislation passed and get sharks protected so that they can live healthy lives. And a lot of these animals move hundreds of thousands of miles every year. Tiger sharks migrate a lot, and they go into multiple countries during those migrations. So it's an international play. It's an international cooperative play, and we're talking about convincing governments to sometimes sacrifice elements of resources that they can monetize in the short term for long-term benefits. So it can be tough, but we're motivated to get it done.
Well, you're based in D.C. You're obviously an American that's born and bred here. You've got a lens from this perspective, but how do you look at where we see it in the U.S. compared to a lot of other countries, or maybe more other regions? I mean, obviously in Southeast Asia, sharks aren't as appreciated as others in the Bahamas, where they are appreciated more, and we're getting that legislation passed. We're seeing the spike in growth of sharks. The Bahamas is a very small country, and it's you've got a gazillion other islands there that aren't as respectful of the ocean necessarily as some others. So how do you, when you tackle it and you think of just the sheer number of governments that all these groups are having to deal with, where do you see us in the U.S. versus other countries and regions and who need to do more to help protect the oceans?
Well, I guess I'll start by saying I'm a proud American. I love being American. It is incredible to live in a country where you can pursue your passions and dreams and
Amen.
make money off of that. That's incredible. And yes, there are some real head-shaking moments, particularly lately with some of our leadership. But you know what? We have so many liberties in this country that we just can't take them for granted. And I can tell you, because I've traveled all around the world and I've seen, hundreds of thousands of people in slums in Africa,
right,
and millions of people crowded in dirty corridors in Asia, in places like that, and we got it pretty good here. Yes, we have our problems. We got it pretty good. As a Western society and culture, we tend to be a little bit more on the from a conservation standpoint, a little bit more on the fluffy, huggy, and wanting to protect just for the sake of protecting things. And there's nothing wrong with that, by the way. I do believe that we do need to protect things for their inherent values to our planet and the services they provide. But other countries don't see it the same way. For example, Asia, they do not see conservation the same way we do at all. There's very, very limited conservation ethic there. It is changing with younger generations coming up, and I think social media has been big for that. I think celebrities, some groups out there, like there's a group Wild Aid, that they've done a lot of really great work getting celebrities like Yao Ming to do PSAs, to help promote shark conservation, things like that. So it's an evolving thing. There are some countries that are going to have a harder time getting it, just to the point I raised earlier, where they need to survive in the short term. But it does always come back to money.
Yeah.
And places like the Caribbean where we do work, a lot of these countries rely exclusively on tourism to drive their GDP.
Exactly.
Thousands of people rely on the hotel industry, airlines, tourism operations, whatever. And in the Caribbean, a lot of that's focused on ocean. People want to go to the Bahamas, and they want to go to Turks and Caicos because it's gorgeous and the ocean's right there and it looks amazing. So that's a good place for groups like ours and others to come in and say, well, let's work together for some solutions that keep the oceans healthy and protect what's really important so that your tourism product can flourish and continue to grow. Because if your reefs die and there are no fish for people to eat at the restaurants that they go to, no one's going to go there. I hate to tell you that. So that is the conversation that we need to really focus a lot on, is not just we need to protect things to protect them, but really we need to protect things in order for us to survive and make a living.
So with your business hat on, how do you see using sharks today to help them with brand equity and really helping companies grow? I mean, like you said, this is tough to do if you're talking about jellyfish, for example, but how have you seen it work for you in your business endeavors?
Sharks have been amazing for us for a lot of different reasons. I'm really grateful to these animals. Obviously, we're raising money to do scientific research, conservation projects on sharks, but we do find funders and donors who have an inherent interest in sharks in many cases, and that has been helpful. I've raised millions of dollars from so many wonderful supporters over the years because of that, and very grateful for that support, and the ongoing support too, by the way, which is huge. So that's like the first point. But then, getting brands excited, and if brands and sponsors want to do more in terms of their own corporate sustainability initiatives, sharks are a nice entry point into trying to do that, because those brands can then leverage the sharks, right, to put out cool content, get people excited. There's lots of other groups out there that have done a really good job of marketing sharks, for getting beer companies involved and clothing companies. We're working with a really exciting apparel company right now that they are really excited about ocean conservation, but they also really love sharks.
Exactly.
So that stuff has really been huge for us, Kenneth. And I do believe that things like Shark Week and like we talked about those movies and all that, I mean, they exist for a reason. People love these animals. They always have. And we're so excited about that because it has helped us with our brand equity. And like even on things like social media and Instagram, if I post a photo of a tiger, it's not going to perform as well as my worst picture of a shark, because it just seems like people are the most excited about that. At least my following is.
Yeah.
So we continue to leverage them. We don't objectify them in any way, and we hope that our efforts really just all ladder back to trying to make the oceans a safer place for these sharks.
Agreed. Well, Austin, you're on a shark's perspective with a guy that's been nicknamed Shark since he was a kid. So I asked this of all my guests. What is your favorite kind of shark and why?
Love it. Favorite shark, it's got to be the tiger shark.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty unapologetic about it. They are unreal. They are incredibly adaptive. They are very charismatic. They eat all sorts of different things. They swim super far. They're adapting to things like climate change, which has negative and positive, outcomes. Don't have to get into that, but they are just fascinating. And I've been really lucky to have access to that species a lot over the years. And because of that, I've been able to learn a lot, done a lot of cool research with my collaborators, tracked them, seen their movements, from Australia to the Galapagos and the Atlantic Ocean, the Caribbean, everything in between. They're such a global ambassador for sharks, in my opinion.
What area of the water do you like the most to see them in? Is it around Tiger Beach area?
Tiger Beach is cool. It's changed a lot. This is a dive site in the Bahamas. That's probably the number one place to see. Have you dove there before?
Yeah, I have.
Yeah, it's changed a lot in the last 5 years. Not necessarily for the worse, but it's become it's not as relaxed as it used to be, in my opinion. I was just there in January filming with Shark Week, and it was like, whoa, these are pretty frisky. These sharks are a little bolder than I remember. I think my favorite experience is probably just snorkeling with sharks, honestly. Like, diving is cool because you can get under the water and it's amazing. But I like less gear. I like being able to move around more freely. The interaction just feels a little more pure. And at the surface, sharks are, in general, they can be a little bit more interactive.
Right.
So, surface is really cool for me. And
well, you get a great view.
Surface.
You get a 30,000 foot view. It's like being in an airplane.
Sure.
Maybe not
like you're in an aquarium.
Exactly.
I think being out in the open ocean is kind of creepy as that can be sometimes because you're far away, but just nothing but blue, and you have one or two sharks. It's cool when you have a ton, but I like it when it's just one or two, and you can really study the animal and you feel like you're connecting to it and you're making eye contact. To me, that is just the ultimate interaction.
Oh, agreed. Yeah, it's fine and all to see one or two, and then I was just surrounded by between 30 and 50 Caribbean reef sharks not that long ago, and the same thing with white tips or black tips. I mean, the white tips and black tips aren't that big, but when you get 50 of them and they're pretty damn curious, it can be a much different experience if you're not careful.
Yeah, I like my interactions with sharks to be non-stressful.
Yeah, exactly.
And I really do. I really like them to be. I want to enjoy it. I want to enjoy the animal, and so I always try to do that side for sure.
Well, Austin, it's that special time in my show. Are you ready for the 5 most interesting and important questions that you're going to be asked today?
Of course. Yeah, let's do it. I'm in.
All right, here we go. Number 1, 2 beautiful sharks, one where you're originally from and one where you visit frequently. The great white shark, which you'll find plenty of off the waters of Massachusetts and in that area up there in the Northeast, or the Caribbean reef shark, which you find plenty of in the waters off the Bahamas.
Ooh, I would say great white shark. Reef sharks are amazing. They're really the unsung hero, in my opinion, of the shark world. But great whites are so rare that you actually see them. So being able to see a great white up close is just wild. So I got to go with white sharks.
Number 2 is strictly from a swimming shark appreciation perspective. Rob Riggle or Shaquille O'Neal?
Wow. They're both really different.
Yeah, I'm sure Shaq could take Rob in one-on-one or horse or anything involving basketball, but with sharks is another story.
I spent more time with Riggle, and he was just hilarious. And he was such a nice guy.
Yeah.
He had the whole crew just rolling on the floor constantly. I've done 2 shows with him. Super nice guy. Love Riggle. And I've spent a lot more time with him than I do with the Shaq show. But then you have Shaq, who's just, he's Shaq.
Yeah.
He's incredible. So I would say both. Sorry to be that guy, but I like working with both of them.
Number 3, Batman or Aquaman?
Batman. I know that might not be the popular or expected choice for me, but the Dark Knight is just the coolest, and I like him because he doesn't have any superpowers. He's just a badass.
Yeah, that's not necessarily the one that I expected, but it wasn't up till just a few years ago that Aquaman with Jason Momoa was not bright fluorescent orange and green. So
yeah. I had fun in Aquaman, and I got to give a shout out to Momoa, who's a big ocean guy.
Yeah.
If you're listening to this, man, hit me up. Let's chat. But no, I think it's just great to see celebrities like him embrace conservation.
All right, number 4. This is 2 women who I find very attractive, who look very similar. You'll understand when I ask the question. Paris Hilton or Ocean Ramsey?
So I've actually met both, which
really?
I know that might sound crazy. Yeah.
But
I met Paris Hilton. Yeah, I met Paris Hilton just in passing at Coachella a few years ago when I was up there.
That's funny.
Yeah, it was a flyby.
Yeah.
I don't interact with her much. And in Ocean, of course, I know from the shark world. But I got to give it to Ocean because she's actually out there trying to do something really cool, and she's coming at it. She's developed her fame, whereas Paris sort of had it, and then she's gone off that platform. But I have a lot of respect for people who kind of bring it up from the bottom up.
Yeah, they look very similar. You see pictures, but I don't think Paris Hilton can hold her breath for 6 minutes like Ocean can.
True.
So, and anybody doesn't know who Ocean Ramsey is, they need to go Google her. She's amazing. So number 5, and the most important question that you're going to be asked today is biscuits or cornbread?
Ooh, I gotta go with biscuits. A little bit more versatile. I know cornbread's kind of a staple, but biscuits are, they're a little bit more of a full body kind of, experience for me. So biscuits all the way.
Well, so Austin, where can people find out more about you, your exploits on the waters, keep up with what you're doing, and more?
Great. Instagram's probably gonna be the best place for following me, Dr. Austin Gallagher. That's at Dr. Austin Gallagher. Also my website, austingallagher.com. And also if you want to check out the work that our group Beneath the Waves is doing, similar, BT Waves. That's the account on Instagram at BT Waves, and then just beneaththewaves.org. And drop us a line. We'd love to hear from you.
And you also have a podcast as well.
Have a podcast, it's called Shark Brain, and we sort of dissect principles and adaptations from the shark world, interview guests just like this one that we're on now, and kind of talk about how we try to improve our own performance by following sharks.
Agreed. Dr. Gallagher, thank you again so much for being with us today on A Shark's Perspective.
Oh, it's my pleasure. It was a lot of fun, and so pleased to hear that there are other podcasts out there and platforms to get people excited about these animals because of business.
Amen. So there was my conversation with Dr. Austin Gallagher, a marine biologist and considered a world authority on sharks, the CEO and chief scientist of the NGO Beneath the Waves, a National Geographic Explorer, a Fulbright Distinguished Chair in Environmental Science at Canada's Carleton University, an Adjunct Professor at Northeastern University, and he's given a TEDx Talk on facing and overcoming fears. Let's take a look at 3 key takeaways from a conversation with him. First, let me qualify something I said earlier. Overfishing is the biggest threat, and shark finning is deplorable. But you also have to look at the pollution in the water, and I just got back from a dive, so this really is sitting near and dear to my heart. When you find trash in the ocean, it is really upsetting to see how much bleaching we see of the coral, how much trash you find in the ocean, and I hope that all of us will take a little more thought into making certain that we try to conserve the planet we live in and the waters. I'm not necessarily anybody that works day to day on becoming a conservationist, but I do do hope that everybody will take a better appreciation of this planet that we've been given. Second, even he calls Shark Week the #1 platform for getting people excited about sharks, and I cannot agree more. As I mentioned, I've even taken a vacation around the week that Shark Week was on. So, when you think about all the movies that come out, there's so many people that I know on both sides of this that hate the idea of movies like Jaws because they paint sharks in a different light. But if it makes you come to appreciate sharks more without senselessly killing them or overfishing them, I'm all for it. I want people to think more and appreciate more sharks and what they are in the waters. Help protect them, help foster them. These are not mindless creatures. These are things that when you see them in the wild, they're very curious animals. Just like anything else in the water, though, you've got to respect their territory. So learn to appreciate the medium that you may get entertained with sharks. Just don't pay too much attention to the movies and shows that are just crazy and aren't worth anything. I mean, Dr. Austin even participates on several Shark Week shows, and I'm incredibly glad that they're giving him a better platform to get his name and NGO out there so that he can even go further to help protect sharks as well as provide information to help save our oceans. Third, this is a big deal for me, overcoming fear. And I love his quote when he said if everybody was able to get a better grip on fear, they would really be in a better position to accomplish the goals that they want in life. And that's a great point. I do this now, and I'm actually starting up a mastermind where I'm taking people into the waters and helping them get through, whatever their risk aversion is in business or in life. And then next, we go swim with sharks. It's something I've been planning for some time. One of the biggest things that holds people back, though, constantly is fear. I would encourage everybody to take a look at what is holding you back. There are fears that you need to have. I joke all the time that I don't run into the water senselessly with a Cheeto in my hand and some barbecue sauce. However, I also know how to understand and channel any fear or anything that challenges me so that I can overcome it. And that's part of the reason why years ago I was able to swim with sharks, and that helped me learn to appreciate what fear is and how to get over it and not let it hold you back. So if you need help, whether it's overcoming fears or you're trying to break through something or it's achieve something higher in business or marketing or advertising or whatever it is, if you've got a question, send me an email to kenneth@asharksperspective.com. Thank you again for the privilege of your time. We need more people thinking about life in the ocean and how to think like a shark. So join us on the next episode of A Shark's Perspective.